What if healing wasn't just about getting by, but about waking up each day with clarity, energy, and hope? Dr. Fawad Mian is the rare kind of physician who blends cutting-edge neurology with regenerative medicine, functional health, and an insistence that no one should be told their pain is just how it is. With years of experience treating neurological, sleep, movement, and pain disorders, he's built a clinic that does more than diagnose as he listens, innovates, and often offers alternatives to surgery or lifelong medication. He is board certified in neurology, clinical neurophysiology, and sleep medicine. He was trained in rigorous neurology residencies and fellowships, and now leads a practice that combines traditional treatments with non-traditional, non-insurance covered therapies, including prolotherapy, platelet-rich plasma, and others. What sets Dr. Mian apart isn't just his credentials, it's his personal belief in treating the whole person, making medicine human again, and refusing to accept limitations as a final word. This is a conversation about transformation at the intersection of science and possibility, where medicine becomes more than just pills and protocols and starts to become a partnership, an insight, and a source of hope. And before we start this episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth, and the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Jane, a graduate, who says, and I quote, "The Deep Wealth Mastery Program prevented me from making what would have been one of the biggest mistakes of my career. I almost signed on the dotted line with an unsolicited offer that I now realize would have shortchanged my hard work and my future had I accepted that offer. Deep Wealth Mastery has tilted the playing field to my advantage." Or how about Lynn? Wow, he gets right to the point, and I quote, "Deep Wealth Mastery is one of the best investments ever made because you'll get an ROI of 100 times that. Anyone who doesn't go through this will lose millions." And as you're listening to these testimonials, are you wondering if you have the time? Are you even thinking that you've got this covered? You have the advisors or people in your network? Well, I got to tell you, these myths, they're often behind the 90% failure rate for liquidity events. Think about it. You have one chance to get it right for your financial freedom. You really want to make it count. And when it comes to time, let's hear what William has to say. We just got in this testimonial. William says, and I quote, "I didn't have the time for Deep Wealth Mastery, but I made the time and I'm glad I did. What I learned goes far beyond any other executive program or coach I've experienced." So what do you think? As I hear that, that's exactly what gets me out of bed every day. That's my mission. That's the team's mission here at Deep Wealth, to literally change the social fabric of society, one business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. And my Deep Wealth Nation, what I want you to know, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it isn't theory. It's from the trenches. It's the only one based on a 9-figure deal. And that deal, that was my deal. You know my story. I said no to a 7-figure offer. I created a system that later on, myself and my business partners, we said yes to a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. That's what we now call the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, or the Scale for Ultimate Sales system. It's built by business owners for business owners. So if you're interested in growing your profits, for preparing for a future liquidity event, and that may be 2 years away, it could be 22 years away, whatever the time may be, you want to do this now, and you want to optimize your post-exit life. Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. To get started, email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. You'll receive all the information about the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, or better yet, why not hop on a complimentary strategy call? We'll go through exactly where your business is today and what's standing between you and your financial independence and your dreams. So that's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you. They're looking to grow their businesses, create market disruptions, and unlock their financial freedom to get what they deserve. And whether you've been in business for 3 years, 40 years, you're a startup, you're in manufacturing, you're in high tech, low tech, whatever the case may be, come on in and network with other business owners. It's a safe space. It's a confidential space with business owners, with businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. So again, the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. Well, Deep Wealth Nation, our tagline here is helping you extract both your business and personal deep wealth, pun intended. So let me ask you this morning, Deep Wealth Nation, how was it for you when you woke up? Did you have brain fog? Did you get out of bed? Do you lack energy? Do you not have that spring in your step? Do you have some ailments that are bothering you? Well, got news for you. If you're focusing on that, you're not focusing on your business. And the two go hand in hand. That's what we're going to be speaking about today. We have a very special guest in the House of Deep Wealth. Dr. Mian, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. You're in some really exciting and new areas that I don't think Deep Wealth Nation has necessarily heard about. Want to hear all about that. But before we do, what's your story, Dr. Mian? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for having me on the show today. I deeply appreciate that. Glad to hear all the listeners out there. But what got me into a lot of the stuff that I'm doing was stumbling through my own issues, just like everybody else. So originally, I started out as a neurologist, which I still do. But as time was going on, I started seeing people have multiple issues. And one of those issues was pain, for instance. People that would have chronic pain issues and they would have injuries, and there would be orthopedic doctors sending patients to me, pain doctors sending patients to me ultimately. And they would always say something like sounds more neurological to me because they don't know what's going on. And I would scratch my head and kind of look back at these patients or whatnot, I'm trying to figure out why they think these things were neurological or why they were told this. At the same time, what was also happening with me is that I ended up with, just out of the blue, I had a shoulder injury when I was lifting some weights, just like everybody else who wants to be active in their personal life and then their business or whatnot. You want to stay in shape so you can actually help yourself get through your business and be able to handle your business. But I injured myself doing something called shoulder shrugs, injured a small joint in the front of my shoulder called the AC joint, and I was in terrible pain. And so did what everybody else does. I went to the orthopedic doctor, and the orthopedic doctor, one of the first things he says, well, maybe we can get a surgery out of this. Maybe you have something called a slap tear, which is a fancy way of saying some cartilage tear in the shoulder. It's not exactly the first thing that I wanted to hear, like going to the orthopedic doctor, but it's very common to hear that. Thankfully, I had the scan. Nothing was torn, but I had bad arthritis there. I had a couple of steroid injections, which I regretted later on, but it actually helped a little bit, maybe. I was still having a lot of pain. I couldn't put my arm above my head. I couldn't, it was hard to put a jacket on by putting the arm behind my back too, as well. It was hard to sleep on. I couldn't exercise, which to me, it was an important thing for me because it's always been something I do and I always feel good doing it. So it made me quite miserable. At the same time, while all this was happening, I started ending up with a foot issue one day. I lived in New York City, did training over there, so I did a lot of walking and had a little bit of plantar fasciitis, which is some irritation of the tissue on the bottom of the foot, but that went away. Then one day after I had moved to the New Jersey area, I was just walking to the front of where I was, and all of a sudden my foot started hurting, and I thought maybe it's just a bad shoe. And I was like, man, it's a really bad shoe. I shouldn't have gotten this shoe. And and I changed the shoe. It didn't change anything, and I was limping around, and that lasted a good long time. And I did what other people would do. I went to the foot doctor. The foot doctor essentially told me, well, okay, you have some plantar fasciitis. Let's do some steroids because that's what you do. Get some nice orthotics that are actually more painful than what I thought they would be. They did some x-rays. And I had gotten a couple of rounds of steroid injections on my foot. And at that time, by the third injection, I was like, okay, maybe that third time was a charm because I only have a little bit of pain now. So I'm like, okay, fantastic. Steroids finally kicked in after three times. So now I decided I was going to go run on the treadmill. And I started running on the treadmill. And then all of a sudden, my Achilles started hurting, which is a tissue on the back of your heel. And then also the inside of my ankle started hurting. So went from one problem to the other, had a lot of pain in those areas. And I went back to the foot doctor. And then he did some other treatments and don't put steroids in the tendon, which thank God he didn't do, which I wouldn't do in any tendon of any sort because that can lead to an issue. But he wasn't getting any better. My shoulder was bothering me. But then what started happening is because I was walking awkwardly with what I was having, then my knee started going. I had an ACL repair in 2001 and I started having pain again. And I was limping around. I mean, I felt like I was a MASH unit at that point, and I wasn't even 40 at that point. I was going to my late 30s, and I felt pretty debilitated, and it was hard to function. They would give me pain medications that would give me things like brain fog and whatnot. I was in misery. And then inevitably, the answer for a lot of these doctors that I went to was, well, let's do surgery. For your AC joint, let's chop off part of the bone that would leave pressure on the tendon on the bottom. For your foot issue, let's chop off part of the bone on the back of your heel, reattach the tendon. For the knee, the ACL that was theoretically repaired was not repaired correctly. probably never took, wasn't put in the right place after getting opinions from other people. And then the orthopedic surgeon, without even looking at the reports, let's just scope your knee and see what we see there. So at that point, after having had gone through a surgery that already failed and had multiple pain issues, was at a crossroads in terms of what I needed to do. And I thought to myself, I don't want surgery anymore. I've had plenty of surgeries, some of which I haven't even mentioned, but I've had plenty of steroid injections too as well. This isn't how I want to live my life. I'm not even 40 just yet. And I'm well past that at this point, but I had to find other solutions. And I stumbled on something called prolotherapy and rich plasma many years ago, probably about 13, 14 years ago, before it was a little bit more well known. And I know athletes were getting it at the time. And I went to go get training and had some injections, and that started helping. Eventually, I had to do a lot of PRP on my own on my Achilles to undo all the injuries that I had and also the plantar fascia. That healed. I can run now on the treadmill. Fortunately, I didn't need to get anything chopped off. Also for my collarbone, and that's still here, thankfully. But I did PRP into my joint on myself as well. That helped undo that. And then in terms of my knee, we had to do some treatments on my knee that were surrounding the structures. Obviously, I can't make an ACL anymore, but my knee is stable enough where I can run and do things like that. Obviously, I'm not going to do any cutting movements that can actually probably cause more issues. And obviously, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, a little bit older. So I got to be a little bit careful about some of the stuff that I do. And so I started implementing this with my patients many years ago and started seeing the positive changes that I had in them as well with the treatments that we are doing. And now we've also added in autologous stem cell therapies, which come from your own body. But around that time, instead of medications, I also adopted a lot of holistic treatments too, as well, with things with supplements and looking at things from the outside and doing some more functional medicine related things. I know they call it more biohacking and functional medicine. But I was finding my way through a lot of this, not only for myself, but for my patients over time. So when patients actually come to me, well, they're actually looking for a lot of alternative treatments because they don't want to be on prescription medications ultimately, or they want to have alternative treatments for the pain that they've had too as well. And so we've been very fortunate that it's done a great job for a lot of people over the years. It's something where I've actually treated my own family members too as well, even with these injections, and then they've helped tremendously too as well. And so as time has evolved too as well, I keep trying to find different ways of how we can try to make somebody better without necessarily throwing a pill at them, which may potentially make them sick.
Wow, a terrific story and journey. And by the way, Deep Wealth Nation, everything that we're talking about today, this is not medical advice. It's simply Dr. Mian and myself sharing some stories and some insights. Always check with your medical professional before you do anything. But let me ask you this, Dr. Mian, as you're going through that, you have all the credentials after your name. You started in neurology and you started doing some cutting edge neurology. And today we'll hear things that are becoming more popular in the headlines, things like regenerative medicine or functional health. So for someone who's hearing that, yeah, I've heard about that. I don't really know what that means. What would you want them to know about regenerative health or functional medicine? What does that really mean?
So in terms of regenerative medicine, obviously it's a very loose catch-all phrase, but the idea behind all of these injections is trying to help heal the areas of damage, heal the areas of tissue. Ideally, even though we can't really say this with 100%, but when we do these kinds of treatments into things like cartilage, things into bone and tendons, they look better radiographically or even on ultrasound too as well. Even though I think there's more new research that needs to go into that ultimately. There have been some colleagues that actually been able to have even regenerate ACLs that were mostly torn too as well by doing things like stem cell therapies. I'm well beyond that because I found out everything on the late side. In terms of functional medicine, I think the best way to describe that is really trying to dig deep into what's causing your problem. And so it's not just the superficial stuff that's typically done in a medical office because we're bound by what the insurance allows us to do. There's certain tests that they won't allow us to do. And if you go for one problem with one doctor, you may have to be sent to 10 other different doctors for different body parts or different health systems. With the functional medicine, it tries to integrate all of that together by looking at things deeply. And so that's how I look at it in terms of what the name is.
Okay, and this is really out there. And as you mentioned, some of the things that you're doing aren't even going to be covered by insurance. And we'll get to that in a moment, but your approach, and again, what I'm about to say, this is not a judgment or a slight against doctors or the medical establishment. I know they're doing the best that they can with what they've been given to work with. You're different though, because I know for most people, when they go to the doctor, they'll see the doctor once a year, they'll have their yearly physical. If they spend 7 minutes, 10 minutes with the doctor, that'll be a lot, and then out the door they go. And that'd be like me having a business. I'm seeing my accountants for 7 minutes. Okay, Jeffrey, here's what you need to know. I'll see you this time next year. well, this is our health that simply isn't going to help on the health
Yeah.
side, and that's not going to help on the business side. And so you're looking at the whole person,
Right.
not in silos. Okay, Jeffrey, let's just look at, in your case, you're talking earlier with your knee or your tendon or this or that. Let's look at the whole body here. And I know part of your background is also with sleep medicine in addition
Mhm.
to the neurophysiology. So you're looking at the whole person
Right.
and how everything is interconnected. Can you walk us through why we should be looking for that in our personal care, in our doctors, of not just a silo effect and the benefit of the whole person? I mean, on paper, it sounds easy enough. It seems fairly self-explanatory. Yet in reality, in practice, that's usually not the case.
Yeah, I will harp on the insurance companies because they unfortunately dictate too much in terms of what we do or just influenced by the insurance or whatnot. But the reason why we really should be able to look at things more holistically is because if you think about it, how much money is being spent for all the drugs and the medications that you're on for different reasons that can make you sick? So potentially you're making somebody sick. The cost can be high. Your insurance premiums are high in general. Your out-of-pocket max, your co-insurance, and all that stuff that gets nebulous to the average person, but we see like on a daily basis, there's a high cost to that. Medication certainly can make you sick. You may have surgeries that are necessary too as well because you're missing something. You're not looking at a key thing. I just give you an example of like just something that would be maybe a bit easier to understand to the layperson. So, for instance, we'll see a lot of people that have headaches, and one of the things I always tell people, about headaches is that the head is just a victim in all of this. It's not really the true cause of everything that's going on. It's not the head itself, it's everything else, whether it's a chronic neck issue, hormone issue, some underlying infection, poor stress, poor sleep, poor diet, gut issues, and the beat goes on with all that. There's so many different things, even sleep too as well. There's so many different things that could be affecting that, and we try to look at all of that because ultimately, if we can solve the underlying issue or knock out bits and pieces of it, wouldn't necessitate being on a prescription medication that could make you sick or something that's costly or something you can't afford. And so, for instance, even today, I just had a patient where there was a certain treatment that this individual had to have, and the insurance just keeps denying it and just trying to find something else that won't help this person. This is but where we're stuck in the rut of the insurance ultimately. And I kind of wish things weren't the way that they are, but the insurance also approves things that a lot of times would end up being more noxious to the person, more harmful to the person versus something that doesn't. And that's, I think, more of a pure numbers game for the insurance companies. I mean, they all do quite well in general, but I think we really need to look at things more deeply. And that's why you're seeing a lot of more regenerative medicine people popping up. That's why you're starting to see more functional medicine popping up to the point that even Tony Robbins gets involved. And you have Mark Hyman, all these people that are doing all these things because people want alternatives. So you're seeing a lot of people screaming for that in general.
Yeah, that's interesting. And for someone in Deep Health Nation who's hearing us talk, and they're probably saying to themselves, well, Dr. Mian, this sounds great. I've just known my doctor for decades now. I know him or her, and they know me, and life is grand. I mean,
Mhm.
come on, how bad could it be? So for someone who, from the outside looking in, is thinking that we're going to now roll back the curtains, and not that the sky is falling and we're going to be all doom and
Right.
gloom, but realistically speaking, when we roll back the curtain,
Mhm.
before you went down this path, what
Mhm.
were the pressures that you were facing when dealing with patients that had you at one point say, hey, you know what? I'm going to put a stop to that. I'm going to go in a different direction. Even if insurance doesn't cover it, I'll figure out a way with the patients that it'll make sense for them to want to be able to do it. I'm just going to be different out
Mhm.
there than what most people are getting with their quote unquote health care, what some people are now calling sick care. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I was saying. I felt like I was just doing sick care. I didn't feel like I was, even though we still have patients that still want just a traditional medical route, I didn't feel like what I was doing was good enough for them. I knew it wasn't good enough for me. I felt that there were better ways to not make them sick. I found better ways that would be more cost effective to them. And so I just found it just a better option overall, especially with all the stuff that I went through. And I think everybody goes through their journeys in life with different things. Even before the show, we just talked briefly about things. Everybody has to go through that journey and see the light on the other end of it. And as you mentioned, the curtains go back and you really see what's happening. And you see that happen for yourself, and you can also see that happen for other individuals. And so as time went along, even with my own injuries and other things that were affecting me, where I did have brain fog and I had other issues too as well, I had to find better solutions than what were out there because there's not just always like a pill out there as a solution for everything, unfortunately. And that's what traditional medicine, unfortunately, has become. It's either a pill or a surgery, and unfortunately.
And so when it comes to your area of specialty, what your focus is on from a very high level, when would I want to be picking up the phone and say, okay, Dr. Mian, heard you on the Deep Health podcast. I'm going through exactly A, B, and C, what you mentioned. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. What would that be?
I would say in general, if you've been suffering through something or an injury or like a bad knee, bad shoulder, bad neck, and it's been going on past a couple of weeks, I think that's a great time to start having a conversation. If things are lingering on beyond that, it's unlikely to heal very well on its own. There are also cases I would tell people, look, you may feel not so well for these few couple of weeks or a month or two, but then you get better and you're like, okay, I'm good. I think I'm good. All right, I'll see you later. 2 or 3 months roll by, and then all of a sudden, oh, it's bothering me again. It's killing me. That's kind of what I mean. And so that's the time to have a conversation. So for me, it's always about how can we be a little bit proactive so that you don't relapse back to where you are, especially if, say, in your neck or your spine, there's a little bit of instability or in your shoulder or whatnot. And so we kind of have that conversation. Look, there's that traditional medical route. X-rays are hit and miss in terms of what we do in general because it doesn't always show the full picture. But maybe you might need to have an MRI to take a look at things in more deeper detail. Maybe also an ultrasound, say if it was just take an instance for like a knee. And that would give us better detail and better information. And then we can determine, hey, look, I definitely wouldn't be putting steroids inside that joint because steroids have proven that actually they destroy the cartilage, they destroy bone, and they actually start tearing up tissue as well if you're using it more frequently. And that wouldn't be the best long-term solution because in the case of the knee, that's going to lead you more to a knee replacement, but also increase your risk of mortality ultimately. Even now in the research studies that are coming out with that. So I'll tell them, look, maybe we need to do some supplements, maybe some physical therapy. Maybe you might be, depending on how bad your knee is or where your knee is at and where you're at with all of this, maybe a regenerative treatment now. Because if you did it now, you may be able to preserve your joint for a very long period of time to the point where you don't need to have a surgery. You don't need to be debilitated. I mean, having going through a surgery, having gone through different ones, you don't feel well afterwards, and the recovery sometimes can be quite long. And the older you are, if you do have a surgery, say for instance, the idea of Uncle Joe doing the surgery before, beforehand in terms of how they are versus afterwards, that person may not even be the same. We do see neurological changes in people who do undergo surgery afterwards, and although it doesn't happen all the time, I do see it enough frequently. And we're like, well, do you want to undertake the risk of even having the surgery for something like that? And the surgery, just because you have a surgery, does not mean that everything is going to be fine afterwards. Wasn't fine for me. Wasn't fine for a lot of patients that I've had over the years too as well. So the surgery is not the be all end all of this. And that's why I always think, well, let's preserve what we have first.
That's so interesting of what's there. And so fact or fiction, and I know the question I'm going to ask, you'd be completely ready to say, well, Jeffrey, it really depends on the person. It's different. Everyone's health journey. It's never two that are the same. But generally speaking, so many people that I speak to, forget even doctors. Well, Jeffrey, yeah, of course you're feeling that because as everyone ages, they get older and and I'm using the air quotes, normal. It's normal that you wake up with that pain. And of course, you're going to be on medications for the rest of your life. That's just how it goes. That's how it is. Thank goodness we have that. We didn't have that 100 years ago. So be grateful that you have that and just live with it. So for that kind of narrative or something similar to that, what would you say to that?
No, you don't have to live that way. It's just the narrative you've been fed, and everybody expects it. Oh, let me don't bust a hammy while I'm running or something like that. There are people who are older, people have had patients in their 80s, kite surfing, so it's not like this has to stop you. It's just more of a mentality thing. And then if you fed that narrative over and over again, mentally, you're like, okay, well, this is how it is, so I don't need to do anything. Just keep going and just see what happens. And I think ultimately that ends up being more detrimental to your overall health versus being proactive about it.
And so I'll come to you and you'll take me through the regenerative medicine, the functional medicine, what you've honed in, what you've customized for you over years of practice. Also, quite open, a little bit of trial and error with yourself before you're putting it out there with your patient base. But now you have a community, you're a patient
Yeah.
base, that you're going through that. And we can talk about what led to it. And oftentimes, well, I've got to see you now because what led to it, I can't necessarily reverse on my own. But once you've worked your magic and I'm coming out and I'm now on a healing path to feel better, to get back to probably something that I forgot what it feels like to wake up. Hey, I can move. I don't have the pains. I have that flexibility and I can do all those wonderful things that I thought I couldn't do before. What's standing in our way of keeping healthy? So after I see you, okay, Jeffrey, have a great life. I hope you don't have to see me again. Terrible for a business model. That's one of your outcomes, though. And
True.
what do I need to be doing that's going to keep me out of the office because I'm now benefiting from what you were able to do and I'm keeping my body in the best possible shape and health and vibrancy?
Yeah. So, I mean, afterwards, I always tell people, look, we got to be the best version of ourselves. So, what we do with the injections is only one piece of it. What you do afterwards is a lot up to you ultimately. So, if you start adopting more of a healthy lifestyle where you are getting more routine exercises, you're working on some of the muscle imbalances, say, that cause your issues. So I'm just using a knee or a shoulder as an example or whatnot.
Hmm.
Be able to work on those things, then ultimately those treatments we're going to do, those things are going to last a very long time. There are plenty of people that don't come back because they're better. They don't have to. That pain point is not there anymore. We also got to look at what we consume on a daily basis too, as well. Are we eating things that are processed foods?
Hmm.
Are we consuming lots of sugar too as well? Those things can be inflammatory to the body, obviously, and cause more aches and pains that we don't know about. And so eliminating those basic things, gluten and dairy, say for instance, again, you mentioned in the beginning, I would always check with your doctor to dig a little more deep in terms of things with the health, the diet, and the supplements or whatnot. But sometimes eliminating these common basic things can certainly be helpful too as well. I think sleep is also really important too, making sure you get adequate rest. We're in a lifestyle that's 24/7, constant emails, text messaging. Back in the day when we were growing up, it was the telephone and the answering machine that was right next to it. And then you just hit play when you listen to the message, but nobody was constantly messaging you about things as well. So minimizing the stress too as well. That's also we're going to be really important. And then just from a mindset point of view, in terms of things like practicing gratitude are important to keep the mindset positive too as well. And then a lot of that's reinforced from your lifestyle. I think all of those things are really important in a very basic way. So this is very superficial with everything, but I think all those things are really ultimately important so that you do stay healthy and you don't relapse to the back to the way that you were or to the injuries that you were. I'd always encourage people also after these treatments is to start working towards the things that you normally love doing, whether that's playing with your grandkids. Sometimes like kneeling down on the ground, sometimes that's hard for people. For some people, it's just going down up and down the stairs. I mean, being able to do that pain-free can be monumental for somebody. For others, it can be, hey, playing pickleball again, or throwing a football with their kids, or a baseball with their kids. Always encourage people to do more activity because ultimately, the more active you are, ideally, the better off you're going to feel.
And at the risk of simplifying, but not to confuse simple with simplicity, really what I'm hearing you say are some of the basics. Get a good night of sleep
Hmm.
where you're not glued to your phone or the computer. You're actually in darkness. Get a good, if you can, solid 8 hour sleep, if possible, continuous sleep.
Hmm.
Watch what you eat. Food is medicine. And
Hmm.
if you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't be eating it if it's on the ingredient list.
Yeah.
And then something as simple, perhaps as even walking. It doesn't have to be hours and hours in the gym,
Yeah.
but just some movement, getting some exercise, taking care of ourselves at a
Hmm.
very high level are some of the things that you're sharing. And as we're talking about this, with what you've been able to do, let's look back 5 years, then let's look forward 5 years. So if you look back at the past 5 years, from what you've learned, what you're now able to heal, and I use that word very deliberately and intentionally, what's been a surprise for you as you look back in the past 5 years of what's changed for the better with what you're doing for your patient base that perhaps 10 years ago you would have thought, hey, not even possible, can't do it.
I mean, just some of the even the injuries that we've looked at, especially when they've been told by the surgeons, "Hey, you need surgery," and we're able to get them out of them. Bad shoulders, bad knees. That's been remarkable. Sometimes even I'm just like I mentioned, I'm very surprised at sometimes how well they're doing,
Mhm.
because I think inevitably for some people we're staving off things for a little bit of time, but I have people who've done incredibly well. That's one thing. I think the other thing, which I think has also been the forefront too as well, is now that there's a move towards, for instance, for PRP, looking at dosage as well. So that's something that we're going to be implementing too, because we're going to try to
Mhm.
find a little bit more of a standardized way of doing everything that we're doing, and then measure that through data registries, which there's at least one that can be utilized. There are some smaller ones too as well, which really help hone in on the data. And then sometimes it's a combination of things, the PRP and autologous stem cell therapies, which have also been quite helpful too as well.
Mhm.
I think as time goes along, there are going to be other therapies which are not, at least not done in the US or whatnot. They're done overseas, whether IV stem cell therapies. We're looking to see how well that's really going to be with the localized injections there. I think the other thing also that's kind of out there that we don't talk a ton about or whatnot, it's more in the underground, but things like peptides. I think those are also things that are coming a little bit more to the forefront. And then it's, again, I'm ready to standardize and research that a little bit better. But a lot of times, a lot of these things will start off in the underground, especially with the, weightlifters and things like that. And people are using things and you start seeing things. And then years later, you start seeing it more in the general population. But those things can also be combined with regenerative treatment. So I'm always looking to see what kinds of things we can put together ultimately that will give somebody the best outcome and the most long-term outcome.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And as you're saying that with some of the advancements that have been made, if you can wave the magic wand here, I'm handing it over to you. Deep Health Nation, you can't see it, but I'm handing over my magic wand to Dr.
Mhm.
Mian. And if we were to fast forward 5 years from now, and of course, we have artificial intelligence that we're hearing big things about, and particularly on the health side and the medicine side. Again, all of that combined into where you think we're going. Best guess as to where you see this, where we aren't today, but could likely be possible.
Well, like I said, on the regen side, I think what AI is going to be really helpful is synthesizing large swaths of information. So, for instance, if there's a lot of research that's being done, being able to synthesize that down into something that's a bit smaller too as well. But I think AI also can be quite helpful in the sense where it might help us in areas of research too as well, and being able to direct in those kind of areas ultimately, in terms of also looking at things where certain things are going to be processed with stem cells and things like that. I think there's going to be eventually be a role with something like that too as well. So I think the future is exciting with all of this. And AI obviously is spreading everywhere into multi areas of our entire world essentially and everything that we're doing. So I'm really excited about that ultimately when it comes to all of this and just more advancements that are coming out. And I think AI is going to help make that a little bit more mainstream in the next 5 years.
And Dr. Mian, how are you keeping on top of all these things or even ahead of all these things? You have your practice and your patients, you have your own health, your family, your personal
Yeah.
commitments. How do you fit that in? What's that looking like on your side?
Yeah, so just like many of the folks who listen to this who are burning candles on both ends, I mean, I'm not a stranger to that. To always try to learn how to pull back, and I think that's one of the most important things to learn or whatnot. But I look at research. I also look to see what other people are doing across. So I think seeing what other people are doing across the world, I think is also helpful too as well. And then researching things, I think is really helpful. And for me, I'm always looking at physiology and all of that. I mentioned even things like peptides. And so I've been looking more into that in terms of the physiology and how that's something that could heal somebody. And so for me, it's like a little bit of a labor of love,
Mhm.
but it's something where I'm able to put it into part of my weekly practice of doing something like that. Because I think ultimately medicine is moving so rapidly. I think you can't just stay in one area and just rely on one dogma for everything ultimately, because I think the world is changing and you're going to see it passing by if you're just stuck there.
Yeah, it's like anything else. How do we keep on top of our craft and ahead of it so we can reinvent, reimagine, and create and get
Mhm.
all of that out there? What do you think's the biggest myth that here and today, as we're talking, the
Mhm.
general person, and specifically even the entrepreneurs in Deep
Mhm.
Health Nation that are listening to this, what would be one myth that you'd like to share with them of saying, hey, I know you thought that this may be the case. You may want to rethink that or look into that closer than what you have in the past. What would you say to that?
So I would say maybe two things. One is, I mean, drugs and surgery is not the only option for you because that's what traditional medical care teaches you. So if anything, I hope people hear that loud and clear. But the other thing is if you're not really feeling well too as well, that's the time to really seek out other people too as well and get other opinions too. Ultimately, it's how you feel, it's your body. So you don't have to accept living with brain fog, say, for instance, when you know that there may be other things that are underlying your issue and that you need to dig a little deeper to figure what that is so that you're not stuck with taking things that you don't need or stuck in a rut where, you're worsening.
And so, really, not to put words in your mouth, what I'm hearing though, you can say, Jeffrey, on base, off base,
Mm,
be open, be
mm,
flexible. Things change. Beliefs that we had today may not be correct for tomorrow. So be open to saying, hey, okay, not
yeah.
anymore. I'm going to experiment. I'm going to try this or try that, just like we would in our businesses. What worked yesterday, there's no guarantee that it's going to work today. In fact, usually our seeds of failure,
Mhm,
tomorrow's failure, are coming from today's success.
mhm,
As crazy as that sounds, oftentimes that's really the case because we become lazy and hey, yeah, I'll just keep on doing what I'm doing. It's always worked,
mhm.
but things change. Our bodies change, the environment changes, medical findings all are changing for us and oftentimes for the better. And if someone could, coming out of this episode, and we're not in the wrap up mode just yet, but coming out of this episode, if they could do one thing that could really move the dial for them on their health, a low hanging fruit,
Mhm.
whether it be in the neurology area or the peptides, even sleep, whatever it
Mhm.
is that you think would be the most beneficial, what would be one thing that coming out of this episode I could do that could really move the dial for my health?
So if I had to pick one thing that would knock out multiple birds with one stone, it would be exercise.
So talk to us about that. When you say exercise, how much, what type, what is that looking like?
So I'd have to lean on, depends on where the person's at ultimately. But I would say, like in general, if you're able, just say for the average person who doesn't exercise a whole lot or hasn't seen the gym very often or whatnot, as you mentioned before, yeah, if you're going for maybe some walks, and those walks can be brisk, maybe 15, 20 minutes, can go 30 minutes if you're able to as well. I think that's something that can be helpful, especially like after a meal, say, for instance. We eat a meal, blood sugar goes up. That kind of helps streamline that blood sugar so there's less insulin resistance that starts building up too as well. That would
Hmm.
be the most basic fundamental thing you can do. I mean, there are other things people can do, whether they're doing things at work where they're getting up to walk around too as well, or doing squats in their chair, or there's some people that get as fancy as having the small little mini treadmill like at their desk and they're walking while they're doing their stuff. I think that's helpful. But the other unsung hero that gets thrown out on social media too as well, which I've been a big proponent of many years before that even started happening, but it's actually trying to build muscle. So lifting weights, I think, is important. That doesn't mean that you've got to be lifting weights like The Rock or anything like that. But, it's like you're lifting lighter weights, even if you're not used to doing something like that. And maybe having a trainer that helps you if that's possible or
Uh-huh.
some sort. If you start building muscle, it becomes more physiologically active. And so you're able to regulate your blood sugar better too as well. You increasing muscle mass ultimately will help you with muscle imbalances too as well and
Hmm.
less injuries. Because as we get older, we start losing muscle mass for every decade of life. And then you get more fatty deposition and replacement of those muscles too. And so you end up becoming more sick and more inflamed, essentially, or whatnot. So, exercise, whether it's walking, light weights, and things like that, would be the most basic fundamental thing I would have somebody do. If you say, "Hey, I have a bad knee," well, there's a recumbent bike. You can always get one of those, start working with that. You can still get light weights and still do things. There always are ways around of like where you're at with everything so that you can at least start something.
And we can have not just an episode, but an entire series because as you're talking about moving around and glucose levels, I know
Mhm.
the study's somewhat dated. We've actually talked about this on the podcast before. It was close to 9 out of 10 people, and I suspect now it's probably closer to 10 out of 10 people, have some kind of metabolic disease that's
Mhm.
going to lead to inflammation. And now all the studies are
Right.
sharing that inflammation which could come from something as simple as, well, I just had a meal and I didn't take a 15-minute walk. I'm just sitting at my desk or I'm sitting on the couch watching TV and my glucose levels are just going off the charts, which on its own the body can handle. But one thing after the other, sometimes it can push the body over the edge that we're inflaming ourselves. And that's leading to so many of the health issues that we're seeing today. That's just me, though. That's a data point of one as you with all
Mhm.
the letters after your name and being out there and the doctor. What
Yeah.
would you say to that? Is there something to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's all really important because we see that a lot, right? And so if you really, for instance, if you want to get so granular and start measuring things, and even then those things are out there now. It's maybe a little cost prohibitive for some people, for some people maybe not so much, but even having like a glucose monitor and just seeing what happens. I think if people actually had those, more people had them and they started measuring what's happening to their blood sugar after they eat, they would be very surprised about the stuff that they thought was quote unquote healthy and watching their blood sugar skyrocket very sharply on that glucose monitor. And that's not a good thing because it really should be a slow, steady rise and then come back down, not something like this and then it comes back down like a short peak and you come down on the other side of the mountain because that's where people are running into trouble. And so you'd probably make better choices about what you consume too as well. If your stress is high, you'll also see your blood sugar spike up too as well and come back down. So sometimes I look as a surrogate of like how stressed are you with everything, especially if you're working on eating the right kinds of things.
Well, let me ask you this before we go into wrap up mode. Is
Mhm.
there a question that we haven't yet covered, even a theme or message or topic that we haven't addressed that you want to share with Deep Health Nation before we wrap up?
Well, I mean, I'll just touch on it like a little bit. One of the things I've also been diving into deeper is just on memory and brain fog for
Hmm.
people. Even then, I mean, there's a course I started developing and the reason why I did it, and going to put it out there soon, is because I look at everything that's out there and there's just a hodgepodge of all sorts of different things. Nobody knows what to do or nobody knows what to at least look at or understand. And I see the same problem over and over again. And so I just developed a series of videos that I just put together. At least gives you an overview of different things you can look at and what would things to evaluate and potential diagnostics and things like that you could do. So I feel like Guinness is a really big thing because especially with entrepreneurs, which is a big part of your audience, is when you're going a million miles a minute, maybe you're not sleeping well, maybe you may not eating your best or whatnot. Hopefully you are. As you get older with all of that, it starts accumulating to the point where you start having that brain fog. It's harder to remember things too as well. And so if you can kind of look at some of these basic things as well as these more complex reasons, that can start putting you in the right direction, getting you to the right person, and even maybe trying things eventually on your own that might be able to help you with your memory ultimately. And so I think I think we touched on bits and pieces of it with the blood sugar regulation and the weights and all of that too as well. But that's a small snippet of kind of what I talk about like in those series of videos and everything. That's something that could always be like a topic for another day where we talk more about memory and all of that. But I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that you don't have to live with brain fog either. There are ways out of it, and I've solved many pieces over the years. That's part of what I do.
And what's so amazing about this Deep Wealth Nation, and to your point, Dr. Mian, I mean, my goodness, this could be entire series of episodes going into this. There's only so much that we can cover. But Deep Wealth Nation, the big takeaway is, and we'll get to it at the end, is reach out to Dr. Mian. Some of these issues that we've been talking about, yeah, Dr. Mian, Jeffrey, that's me that you're talking about. I'm the poster child for that. Have that conversation, because why not look into what's possible, what can be done? And I know part of your own personal mantra is, hey, let's turn the impossible into I'm possible. And that's very much the entrepreneurial battle cry as well, as we go out there and solve these problems that people say can't be solved and really make it a better day out there. So really hats off to you for being able to do that. And with all that in mind, let's go into a wrap-up mode. And it's a tradition here on the Deep Health Podcast. It's my privilege, my honor, where every guest is asked the same question. And it's a fun question. I'm going to set this up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, there's that wonderful and magical DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. So Dr. Mian, imagine now it's tomorrow morning. And you look outside your window, not only is the DeLorean car curbside, the door is open, it's waiting for you to hop on in, which you do. You're now going to go to any point in the past, perhaps, Dr. Mian, when you're a young child or a teenager, whatever point in time it would be. What would you tell your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, do this, but don't do that. Dr. Mian, what would that sound like for you?
The first thing that popped in my head without even thinking about this in great detail was going back to the time I tore my ACL, going back to that point and knowing and telling, hey, look, there are other options besides the surgery you're about to have. And if you can get those done, trust in it, because it's something many years from now that has helped a lot of people. But that's the most immediate thing that I can certainly think of. But I think probably the secondary thing, I guess, would be a little bit more in line in the non-medical is, I think even if I kind of went to my younger self and I saw just some of my failures or whatnot, is perseverance in everything that you do and building confidence. At the time when I was younger, I wasn't as confident as I am now. And so telling, hey, look, you got to keep work on that confidence, build it up a little bit, because that's going to serve you well as you get older. Don't feel bad or not great about where you are right now, because this can all change very quickly.
What's interesting, as you're talking about that, I'm hearing two themes that are coming out of that. So firstly, be curious. Just because you're told to go this way, well, maybe that's the way, but look into some other ways. And while you're doing that, I'm also hearing you say, believe in yourself.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes we know more than we think we know, and believing in yourself will take us away. That's some terrific advice. In Deep Health Nation, why not start doing that? Be curious and believe in yourself. And I suspect when you're doing that, Deep Health Nation, you're going to love what you see. And Dr. Mian, before we officially wrap up, somebody has a question for you. They want to speak with you. They want to learn more about what's going on. Where would be the best place online to reach you?
So they can reach us on our website at prolohealing.com. And so they can actually make an appointment through there, or they can simply just call our phone. That's a simple way. 973-928-3288. But those would be the two ways they can get a hold of us.
And Deep Health Nation, it doesn't get any easier. This is all in the show notes. Point and click. It's all there for you. Well, it's official, Dr. Mian. Congratulations. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on the show. Really enjoyed it today.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribe, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. one business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.